any this has been a fantastic conversation. I'd love to hear, like, if you have any last words for us, like advice for the audience. If you're a brand, like getting out of this frozen, I go back to the beginning a little bit. You feel frozen, you're doing too much analysis. What should they do instead?
I would look into the future a little bit and say, where we are right now, we're stuck. We're financially constrained. Customers are not buying. I would try to look a little bit beyond that and say, with whatever resources we have available now, what are the things we could do in anticipation that we will come out of this funk? And how do I pilot things, experiment, maybe make small investments? Because at some point we will come out of this. I don't know when, but we will. And how do we position ourselves for what comes next? Because it's always, it's up and down, right? We're in a funk right now.
Right.
We're going to come flying out of the gates at some point. I think when the Fed lowers rates, whenever that is, that's when the floodgates will open and people will start spending. So what can you do now with whatever resources you have to at least position yourself for when things
be ready,
be ready and know where you want to invest those dollars, where you could get the biggest bang for the buck.
Yeah, I mean, prioritize. There was a Jack Nicholson movie that we probably both remember. Like, what if this is as good as it gets? Like, you're not promised that things were going to get better or worse, and so even if you assume things are going to stay the same, you need to be investing, because you have to improve the experience of your customers if you want to grow the business. You're not going to grow the business by waiting.
Well, that's it. If you're not going forward, you're going backwards. I don't think there is such a state of just
stand still.
Hunker down and wait for everything. You're either creeping backwards or you're moving forward, even creeping forward a little bit. Status quo gets you mediocrity. You got to figure out what to do. And again, I get it. There's constrained resources, constrained budgets. There's been a ton of layoffs. With whatever you have, how do you experiment and pilot certain things so that you're positioned for the future? That's what we're doing in our business. And that's the advice I would give to anyone that's running a business today.
Oh, that's a great place to end. And actually, we could take it into our next segment, actually, which is what's happening with the consumer. And the consumer, we've heard this phrase YOLO for so long, and it is yo-no territory. And people are really scratching their heads. They actually cannot understand why. Why are we in this state? And so there's been some data that a friend of the show, Hendrik, shared with us around a Sherwood News synthesis of the Harris and Guardian survey on the economy, which talks about why this consumer is defying what economists feel is a good economy, and like, you should be happy. So they ran this poll, and I want to run a couple of data points by you. 3 in 5 Americans believe the economy is in a recession. We are not in a recession. We haven't been in a recession since 2020. So think about that. 49% think the S&P is been down for a year. It's up 12% year to date. And that's coming off of a year where we ended 2023 up 24%. So kind of let that settle in. And 49% believe that unemployment is at a 50-year high. We just got the jobs report. It came out. So we actually are at a 50-year low. So yes, unemployment ticked up in this latest jobs report, but the jobs report blew out expectations. It's 272,000 a month, up 165,000 from April, and well ahead of what was the consensus and the forecast that it would be at 190. So that's kind of another myth busted. And again, these economists are like, what is happening with the consumer perspective? Like, why are they just not able to get over this? And so we've got a couple of data points to show you, Vinny, if you don't mind firing up. So, that's kind of the story here. Like, we've outgrown our G7 peers. And so if you look at these other nations, we're performing much better than these other economies. And then we're going to go to the next slide, which really just kind of talks about where the perspective is. Inflation is top of mind by far for Americans' top concern, and they're hearing about it, right? But inflation in the minds of the economist is it's down, right? If you saw it at a high,
the hot dog price.